Hi everybody, this is Wael Sallak, and today we are going to talk about personal productivity skills. Now, before I mention our subject today, I'd like to ask you many questions and see how they apply to you. Do you always find yourself buy things you don't need? Do you always find it difficult to tell your morning talkative colleague that you are busy and you have work to do? You find it difficult if your colleague brings a pile of papers and asks you to do the job for him. Do you find it difficult to say no? And do you find it difficult to express your emotions and feelings to other people, and you are afraid that this is going to be embarrassing? If your answer to any of those questions is yes, then perhaps you're missing one of the most important skills, which is assertiveness. Now, assertiveness is defined as your ability to express your emotions, feelings, and opinions with no violation of other people's opinions, emotions, and feelings. In order to understand assertiveness skills, we have to go on the extreme side of assertiveness. We have both extreme sides of assertiveness. Now, looking at the board on my right side, you will find the spectrum. Now, on the far left, you will find what's so-called passive behavior. And on the far right, you will find aggressive behavior. Now, let's start from the right side. Aggressive behavior is addressed as I win, you lose. I win, you lose. My rights and needs and opinion count, but yours, it doesn't count. So, aggressive behavior is expressing your emotions, opinions, and feelings with no regard to other people's emotions, feelings, and opinions. Let's take an example. Now, assuming it's 4 o'clock in the evening and your brother comes into the room, you're sleepy, very tiring day you had before, switch on the lights to take his memory card. And then he leaves the room or the lights on. Now, what happened here? Let's just sit back and analyze. Your brother wanted to take his flash memory, so he took it, so he wins. Left the lights on, you lose, your sleep has been disrupted. Now, this tells us that aggressive behavior is not necessarily somebody is shouting and screaming on your face. It's just a kind of aggressive behavior. Selfish behavior is considered as an aggressive behavior. Any behavior aimed at somebody wins and the other party loses is aggressive behavior. Now, surprisingly, aggressive behavior has its own short-term advantages, which is a sense of power or a sense of gain. You have gained something, you want something, and at the same time, a sense of control. Now, looking at the long-term consequences of the aggressive behavior, we will find that there are two main consequences of such behavior. The first one is resentment from other people. Say you shout, scream on other people, you take advantage of other people. What happens is you will create hate and resentment because your needs count, other people's needs, they don't count. Now, the other one is feelings of guilt. Now, how many times somebody picked up a fight with you and then after 1 hour, 2 hours, 2 days, he comes and apologizes? Now, sometimes the damage couldn't be fixed, so you better watch out. All right? Now, looking at the other side of the spectrum, which is passive behavior. Now, passive behavior is I lose, you win. I lose, you win. Your rights, opinions, emotions, they count, but mine, they don't count. Now, let's take an example of this. Now, assuming your morning talkative colleague comes to you, let's say 8:30, you have work to do, and he starts speaking about his family, his problems, and you have got a job to do. Now, if you feel embarrassed to tell that person that you're busy or you've got work to do, then you're missing assertive behavior. Now this guy, is chatting with you, his emotions and opinions count, but he didn't take into account that you are busy. So if you stop and do nothing about this, then you are acting in a passive behavior. Now what happens if you shout on your colleague's face and tell him, listen, I don't have time for you. Could you please leave the office now? This is going to be an aggressive behavior. Why? Because you have expressed your emotions and feelings with no regard to your colleague's emotions and feelings. Now, this was just a small example. Let's say you go into a certain shop and then you meet this sales guy who would like to sell you everything in that shop, okay, and who's looking to you, okay, as a prospect. Let's say you look at something and he says, oh, you know what, this is going to fit you. And you say, how so? And he says, well, if you just take this one, it's going to fit you, it's going to look good in you. Shall I charge you this one? Do you want to buy it? And then you don't want to buy it actually, but because you lack assertiveness skills, you say, well, yes. Then you take this thing at home, and the second day you discover that you don't need it. This is lack of assertiveness. You couldn't say no to the buyer. The same thing applies to reality, of course, in many, many aspects. Now, in my personal opinion, passive behavior is much more dangerous than aggressive behavior. Passive behavior has also short-term gains, like aggressive behavior does. The short-term gains are reduction of anxiety, because there are no confrontation happens here, so there's no stress in the situation. Applying the same thing to our colleague, or chatty colleague, or our talkative colleague, okay? You don't have to confront him and tell him that he's bothering you, so it's a reduction of stress. But he wins and you lose. Now, the long-term consequences of passive behavior is very, very severe. The long-term consequences of passive behavior is what I call bottling up feelings. When you bottle up feelings, because each time your rights are being violated, your mind takes it as violation number one, violation number two. You start bottling up feelings. And then suddenly, you explode in anger. Or the most dangerous thing is, you feel victimized. You feel taken advantage of. Because you do things for people, And then what you find actually is that they're taking advantage of you. And, you know what? They even have no respect for you. So, you're doing the passive behavior just to please everybody but yourself. So in the passive behavior, you're doing everything you can to seek approval from other people. You think you are gaining approval for people, but you're reaching exactly the opposite. They just lose respect for you. They won't respect you anymore. They will view you as the one who takes all the job, the one who takes all the responsibilities, the one they come to, the one who never says no. The one who never says no. Now, also, if you take assertive behavior in relationships, in the psychology of attraction, let's say, when you take the assertive behavior to women, now women hate passive behavior. Women hate passive men. In fact, women prefer being with aggressive men rather than being with passive men. They would like a man who can express his emotions, his feelings, a man who doesn't say yes to everything, a man who stands up for his rights in a non-aggressive way, in an assertive way. Now, look back at college. Now, how many times you've been into, let's say, a certain relationship where you've done everything you can, you've never said no, and then your prospective woman comes back to you and says, you know what, Muhammad, I love you as my brother. Do you know why? Because you are being passive. You say yes to everything. Now it's time to change. It's time to change. You go from passive to assertive, or if you are on the aggressive side, you go from aggressive to assertive. Now, the passive behavior has also another severe consequence, which is depression, at least depression. If you find yourself sad for no reason, then perhaps the main reason is your inability to say no. Your rights are being violated. You cannot say no. And then suddenly, you find yourself depressed. Now, looking at Libya as a country and the revolution 17th February, our rights are being violated for 42 years. Now, what happened? What happened is, as I told you before, and you explode. What happened 17th February, the revolution, the same thing happened in Tunisia, the same thing happened in Egypt, and the same thing is happening in Syria right now. So, your job right here, right now, is the following. Now, if you are on the far right of the spectrum, the aggressive behavior, then let me draw an arrow here, a left arrow. Then your job is to go to this point, which is the assertive point. If you are on the passive side, then we move into the right side. First question you should ask yourself, where am I on that spectrum? You should choose a point. Are you here, in the aggressive side? Are you here? Are you assertive? Are you passive oriented? Are you aggressive oriented? And then once you define your point, you develop a plan to live with assertiveness. To live with assertiveness, you have to ask yourself in each situation, rate it in your mind. Is this I win, you win situation? Is this I win, you lose? Is this I lose, you win situation? You just balance the situation in your mind, train your subconscious mind and act accordingly. Now, I usually find it very difficult for passive people to move into an assertive behavior. And the first shock you will be taking is knowing that there is a skill exists. It's called assertiveness. Now, assertiveness, fortunately, is a learnable skill, like driving a car, for example. Now, first of all, when you started learning to drive, okay, it took you like 1 month or 2 months to get used to driving. Fortunately, assertiveness is a learnable skill. You can learn it by practice. It's the only skill you aren't being born with. You aren't being born with assertiveness, but you learn it through training. Now, practicing assertiveness in the very beginning would be challenging for a non-assertive person. So people might view that sudden change in your behavior as something weird, awkward. So you have to do it step by step. Create a new community and try to be assertive. Change your friends. Just get rid of those bullies who take advantage of you all the time. Try to develop new friends. Try to develop new relationships. Try to practice assertiveness in your workplace and live with assertiveness in your entire life. Now, the second question is, where does non-assertive behavior comes from? Now, non-assertive behavior comes from childhood. We have been raised in a way where we seek approval from our parents, and then we seek approval from our community, which is school. So we have been raised in a way where before we do any act, we have to view this act on other people, how they're going to affect them. So you grow up operating in the same way. You would like to please everybody else on the expense of yourself. Now, fortunately, you can learn to be assertive. Right here, right now. You can learn to be assertive, because if you're not assertive, you're hurting yourself. If you are aggressive, you're hurting yourself. But aggressive people, they win. They win, they get some winnings, but on the expense of resentment from other people. Taking this into the managerial ladder, they climb up the managerial ladder so fast, but they fall. Now, assertive people, they climb the managerial ladder more slowly, but they stay. But passive people, they never climb anything. You see, I don't encourage aggressive behavior, but what I'm telling you is, being passive will take you nowhere. So, once again, you have to make a conscious decision right here, right now, to move into being an assertive person, to move into a person who says, I win, you win. My rights, opinions, wants, needs, they count. And so are your wants, rights, opinions. They count too. Thank you so much, and see you next time.